CSTIC TV, tu portal de tecnología e informática, al servicio de la sociedad y los negocios.
Containerized applications and services. Third, it brings advanced analytics and recommendations to operations and security teams through the extension of our Insights program to an increasing portion of the portfolio. We've worked to instrument both RHEL and OpenShift to better understand running workloads in these new use cases and then help guide our customers with our learnings. And finally, it brings together the scalability of Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management to manage fleets at the edge with the automated provisioning and security of Ansible. Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform is a key component in realizing the vision of Open Hybrid Cloud by being the connective tissue in managing the applications you have today in concert with the applications you're building for tomorrow. We've covered a lot, and to help bring some of this to life, we're offering 2 demos this year. The first will help you learn about augmenting, automating, and advancing workflows with Red Hat technologies, specifically using automation to manage backlog complexity while maintaining system performance. Think of it as a view into more efficiently managing the applications you have today. The second demo looks at building cloud-native applications with artificial intelligence and machine learning, or in other words, the applications many customers aspire to be building tomorrow. I encourage you to reserve time to watch those. As I wrap up today's perspectives and announcements, I want to leave you with a few thoughts. First, Red Hat is here to help make our customers' businesses successful. And this last year has reinforced the importance of being there for our customers in good times and challenging times. Second, we continue to see how critical the flexibility of Open Hybrid Cloud is to our customers. You need the best of open source, combined with the best of any cloud, combined with the frameworks to enable applications to drive business success. And we're excited about how we're evolving our portfolio to meet you where you need the Open Hybrid Cloud to be. And lastly, with great challenges come great opportunities and great innovations. For 15 years, we've recognized innovative uses of Red Hat's open source technology through the Red Hat Innovation Awards program. This year, our nominees range from healthcare organizations fighting COVID-19, to government organizations protecting personal data, to automakers testing virtual components, to payroll for teachers. We are proud to recognize these customers as Innovation Award winners, and I hope you'll join us tomorrow when we announce the 2021 Innovator of the Year. We could not be more excited to see what our customers build next and to be there to support them every step of the way. Being able to participate in the amazing process of bringing open source innovation to enterprises is both humbling and inspiring. Our work truly begins by building on the innovation in open source communities and is then extended by our customers innovating into practically every aspect of our lives today. And we're proud to serve as the linchpin, connecting these two worlds with Open Hybrid Cloud and influencing the evolution of open source into the future. And we're excited to work with all of you to realize your next ideas in 2021 and beyond.
Matt, I've heard Paul talking about Open Hybrid Cloud for as long as I've been here at Red Hat, over a decade. And we heard you lay out a lot of details today about how it's a cornerstone of Red Hat's portfolio. From your perspective, what makes it a reality today and not just another IT buzzword?
It's a great question, Emily. I think 2020 has actually evolved that quite a bit, where it's always been a vision of ours in delivering Open Hybrid Cloud. But I think this year, customers have realized the need for hybrid is critical for them. They have to use everything at their disposal today, and it can't wait for them to shift to public cloud or change their private strategy. They have to use the tools at their disposal. So that really deals with hybrid. Cloud, for a while, customers have understood that public cloud sets the bar for the experience that they want to be able to provide. So you have the cloud aspect, and then open source. I think most customers at this point realize that open source is driving innovation in software right now. And if they want to tap into that innovation, following open source models is the key component. So if you have all of those pieces right now where it's open source innovation models, it's being able to use the resources you have, whether they're on-premise, off-premise, managed or not, and then actually providing that experience that the public clouds are being able to do anywhere that you're running software. I think that's really what makes it concrete and not just another buzzword.
As these technologies get more readily adopted and integrated with things like machine learning and edge computing, how important is the work that open source communities are doing for future innovation and specifically for the continued success of open hybrid cloud?
I think open source, it's key in all of those areas. One, when we get into edge deployments, actually, open source is changing how hardware design is done, and that design and implementation at an edge layer is really critical. So we're seeing open source move from just software fields into how hardware is built as well. When you get into areas like machine learning or artificial intelligence, open source is a core aspect of that, whether it's frameworks to enable quantum computing access, or it's actually implementation of models for machine learning. Open source really is at the center of that. So for our ability to deliver open hybrid cloud, seeing open source continue to innovate on the hardware side, which enables edge, or continue on the software side, which is enabling different uses of software, artificial intelligence, machine learning, those are the key workloads that we're trying to deliver to. So I think they're a very critical aspect for our ability to deliver to open hybrid cloud.
Finally, you had the fun job of covering a lot of our new exciting product announcements, from Red Hat OpenShift Service on AWS to Red Hat Edge and a whole lot more. Is there a project, technology, or movement you're personally geeking out about?
It would definitely have to be the edge scenarios. And as an engineer, just thinking of the complexity of DNA sequencing on the space station, or sailing an unmanned vessel across the ocean, or making a self-driving car, these are aspects that they're not just cool, they'll change life as we know it. And it really is at that intersection of being able to enable compute right at the users of that, whether the user is a DNA sequencing component or whether it's the passenger in a vehicle. And so I think edge is really starting to change the way that we experience life. And I love that as an engineer, to really be able to be at the center of that change.
Wow, so it sounds like science fiction is finally becoming reality. Thanks for talking with me today, Matt. And I know you're as excited as I am to check out the live demos from Burr Sutter and his engineering team, and to hear Chris Wright tell us about where Red Hat is going with the future of emerging technologies. You just heard Matt Hicks announcing new and exciting additions to the Red Hat portfolio. So to take us a little deeper into the products, we'll hear from 3 passionate subject matter experts about Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform, and Red Hat Insights.
Hi, I'm Tracy Rankin, Vice President of Software Engineering. My team and I are responsible for delivering Red Hat OpenShift. 5 years ago, I joined Red Hat just around the time when DevOps was starting to gain momentum in the enterprise. Red Hat OpenShift was a groundbreaking container platform built on the foundation of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and we had just made a big bet on rebuilding OpenShift around a powerful new technology called Kubernetes. When we look at Red Hat OpenShift now, it is the industry's leading Kubernetes platform. It lets application developers, business owners, and IT professionals build new experiences for their customers and modernize their existing applications. What truly motivates my team and me is seeing the impact of our work. A great example I'd like to share is the story of HCA Healthcare, which has a network of hospitals and clinics across the United States. Their team needed a way to speed up the detection of sepsis, a life-threatening runaway infection. They adopted a DevOps culture of rapid releases on Red Hat OpenShift, which resulted in application spot detecting sepsis up to 5 hours faster and cutting sepsis mortality. Fast forward to this past year, and HCA has built on that DevOps culture to react to the quickly changing COVID landscape. They have been able to better manage hospital inventories, predict patient discharge, and monitor the COVID curve, helping you and your organization rapidly innovate, deliver applications in new ways, and react faster to change is the most exciting and rewarding part of being part of the Red Hat team. All of us at Red Hat are honored to be part of your journey.
Greetings, I'm Susan Roper, Senior Manager, Red Hat Enterprise Linux Product Marketing. Thank you for investing your time with us at Red Hat Summit. I have to share that the Red Hat Enterprise Linux team is crazy passionate about the role Linux and Red Hat Enterprise Linux play in our open hybrid cloud strategy. For decades, open source, Linux, and Red Hat Enterprise Linux have fueled growth and driven innovation in the data center. And now that innovation is happening in the cloud and even at the edge, making the open hybrid cloud the place organizations will run applications that drive their business. Red Hat's open hybrid cloud portfolio starts with Red Hat Enterprise Linux and delivers foundational capability that is built to evolve as technology evolves and move with you as you move. Right here at Red Hat Summit 2 years ago, we made a promise to you when we released Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8, a promise to consistently deliver Linux innovation on a predictable cadence, delivering major releases every 3 years and minor releases every 6 months. And since then, we have consistently delivered those releases. I'm excited to share that in a few short weeks, we will deliver Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.4, the 5th release in the Red Hat Enterprise Linux lifecycle. In Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8.4, we continue to differentiate the base operating system. We'll deliver enhancements to security, performance, and management because security and manageability remain top concerns of our customers across the open hybrid cloud and even at the edge. We'll also provide enhanced developer tools and container tools to give teams the flexibility to build where and how they need, and then easily deploy on Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We'll enable access to new capabilities from Red Hat Insights and Red Hat Smart Management that enhance your public cloud experience and improve the management and security of your Red Hat Enterprise Linux estate. Because we know a consistent experience is what our customers expect across the open hybrid cloud. And finally, we'll deliver additional capabilities in our lightweight edge native operating system that streamline image generation and simplify management of updates because manageability of fleets at the edge is a critical capability for our customers. We commit to you that with each release, we will deliver the consistent and reliable Linux experience you expect as we continue to innovate and stay ahead of technological change in the open hybrid cloud. For those of you that have already started your open hybrid cloud journey with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, we thank you. And for those of you who haven't, please come by our virtual booth. We would love to show you the world of possibilities Red Hat Enterprise Linux can open up for you. Thank you.
My name is Aisha Devereaux, and I am the Director of Product Management for the Management Business Services. Today, I have the privilege of telling you about an exciting announcement for this year's summit, a suite of services that use advanced analytics to identify misconfigurations, vulnerabilities, usage, and costs across the hybrid cloud that can help IT organizations and business stakeholders achieve success. Organizations are embracing innovation and deploying applications and services in the cloud faster than ever before. For many top enterprises around the globe, cloud is here. But while some teams are finding their cruising altitude, not everyone is as far along in their journey. Barriers between teams, lack of visibility, and skill gaps still create problems for many IT organizations. As a result, IT teams and their finite resources are not as efficient and effective as they could be in delivering secure and stable IT infrastructure wherever that may be, on premises, in the cloud, or in hybrid cloud environments. Red Hat Insights is already a stepping stone to smart management for Red Hat enterprise Linux environments. And now, Red Hat Insights is expanding to the open hybrid cloud with support for Red Hat OpenShift and Red Hat Ansible automation platform. Red Hat Insights is a suite of hosted services that helps IT teams manage and automate hybrid cloud environments built on Red Hat platforms. Just like before, Red Hat Insights will be available at no additional cost to customers with a subscription to Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform, or Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. Identifying and prioritizing security, business, and operational risks just got easier with Red Hat Insights, so your teams can increase uptime and optimize resource allocation across the open hybrid cloud.
Shell, thank you for joining us today at Red Hat Summit. Now, Citi and Red Hat have been working together for many, many years at this point. Can you tell us a little bit about our history together?
Thanks, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. Citi was one of the first banks to move to Linux a decade ago. The promise was simple: run your OS on anything from anywhere. And when you look at the Mars rover Perseverance and the International Space Station, I think it's safe to say Linux does run anywhere. But like with all companies, it was a journey as we moved off Solaris and AIX hardware onto commodity servers running Red Hat Enterprise Linux. When we needed to start managing these servers, Ansible became part of the ecosystem. We were a bit optimistic, to say the least, but Ansible really started to encourage us to manage our infrastructure through code. Repeatable automation brought consistency throughout the environment and was applied consistently across the bank. Naturally, that led us to containers and Kubernetes. Red Hat OpenShift has really put us in a position where we can empower developers to manage their applications. At the same time, OpenShift helps us provide better hygiene and security within our bank. With each iteration, you start to see a trend of the infrastructure becoming incredibly abstracted to the developers.
It has been a fantastic journey from the unlocking the capability of hardware to the power we can put in developers' hands today. And I know when we look at banking is a demanding sector and it has a huge appetite for innovation. What are some of the key challenges that you're trying to address via IT?
There's a lot of focus around STP or straight-through processing. And while in theory that sounds straightforward, the complexity really comes from the process itself. A developer is going to write spaghetti code, no doubt about it. But the spaghetti code is there because the process typically has to traverse through many different systems. It's not difficult to build a mobile application. It's difficult to have that mobile application access your existing payment system and your customer data across multiple BUs and any integrations that were built probably a decade ago. All of the systems are in different islands, those of legacy and new technology, and your current process needs to traverse through all of the islands without a hitch each time. There's this consistent drive for new technology. And of course, the flip side, there's a constant drag where people are trying to reinvent their old technology. But what you really need is discipline on building consistent and repeatable platforms, allowing your company to reuse many of the components as building blocks. And there's a tendency for people to get into the weeds of why technology X is better than Y. And honestly, it's a never-ending argument, as any technology you will use will always have an advantage and, of course, its disadvantage when compared to others. What you need to focus on is the outcome. Simplicity drives scale, innovation, and security, which is really what we care about in a bank. Financial services are ripe for disruption. Transactions and customer data is flowing in and out of the bank at an unprecedented speed. Instead of designing around the process, it's about redefining how that process should work.
I love that focus, not just on technology, but the solution, and then also being able to redefine processes and not just work within constraints. I think that's critical. And when you look at that challenge, what do you look for in a vendor? And is the relationship important to you of that vendor?
So people latch on to brands and specific technology offerings like it's the answer to all of your problems. Move to the cloud and magically all of your problems go away. Sound familiar? Well, really, you've just increased the velocity and the magnitude of terrible decisions you could make. We need vendors that understand our outcome and know exactly what part they'll have in that exercise. It's important to know where your part begins and ends. Our environment is one large supply chain. When Amazon deliver a package to you, the pilot who flew your package doesn't ride along to deliver it to your front door. And the relationship grows by solving real problems on the ground. Demand shouldn't be driven from a 10,000-foot contract level. Creating platforms with an incredible user experience is the key to a successful outcome for the customer and the vendor.
Now, I think that outcome focus and the platform experience is such a key point. Can you elaborate a little bit on more from the city perspective what that means to you?
So learning how to use and apply new technologies requires new skills. So Red Hat offered not only the new skills, but also an open approach to using technology to solve our business challenges. Red Hat allowed City not only to deliver our internal cloud, but also help keep up with the innovation in the market and handle unexpected challenges, such as the recent global pandemic.
No, I think it has been a great partnership, and I think that partnership's critical in both directions. As many as the areas that City's grown, I think from the Red Hat side, we also learn a ton just from working with customers like yourself, not just in building technology, but making sure we actually can apply it to the last mile solutions as well. Now, if we take a minute and you look out to the future, what does that future hold for City, and what opportunities do you see on the horizon?
So the goal is to keep up with the market and the pace of innovation, and to ensure we provide a best-in-class service to our internal partners whilst continually developing our people.
I think that is a great aspiration, and knowing City and the years I've gotten to work with you, I know that is a goal that you'll be able to achieve and achieve really well. Well, Shell, I just wanted to say thank you for spending the time with us. I really appreciate it. I know our audience will appreciate it, and thanks again.
Thanks, Matt. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
The approach of open source is very, very interesting for Volkswagen. Red Hat gave us the hint to build up an innovation lab in order to get very fast success, to make more than a proof of concept.
Red Hat y Medife están colaborando en innovar, trabajando en forma muy estrecha. El volumen de soluciones que pudimos entregar y el ritmo al que las pudimos entregar no son comunes en tecnología.
Red Hat OpenShift provides us with a platform to be flexible and very speedy to requirements. Our time from an idea to product is extremely short.
Es de interés para llevar adelante la integración de los sistemas de salud en un país federal en donde cada provincia tiene posibilidad de independencia tecnológica y la necesidad de integración.
It's important for our kids to get a good education. It's really powerful why it matters to deliver this payroll accurately and on time.
It's clear from our first two keynotes that Red Hat succeeds because our customers do. But despite common issues that connect us across the industry, we know each region and organization faces their own unique set of challenges and circumstances. Everyone's on their own journey. That's why we're honored to feature some of our most innovative customers and show how enterprise open source can give you the flexibility and freedom you need to solve whatever problems come your way, wherever you are.
Hi, everyone. My name is Larry Stack, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Global Sales and Services for Red Hat. As you know, open source technology and ideas are behind some of the most critical pieces of our everyday lives. And they also underpin critical decision-making during times of uncertainty. FEMA, the United States Federal Emergency Management Agency, is implementing open source principles to enhance and promote a transparent and collaborative culture within the agency. I'm excited to talk to Ted Okada, Chief Technology Officer for FEMA, about how they responded to the turbulence of last year and how open source is setting the foundation for future disaster response. Ted, welcome to us today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks very much, Larry.
Well, I'm going to jump right in, Ted, if I could, and ask you the first question. I got to tell you, living on the East Coast of the United States, when I think of FEMA, like many, of course, I immediately think about hurricane response or natural disasters. How was the response to COVID-19 different from the traditional emergency response that FEMA usually takes?
Larry, thank you so much. That's a great question. Unfortunately, we also had traditional disasters last year, a record number of hurricanes where we actually exhausted the English alphabet on disaster names. And we actually went into the Greek names for hurricanes. It was a record number of hurricanes last year. On top of that is the complexities of COVID and the response to that, right? So we're talking about all 50 states, additional 6 territories, as well as tribal nations, all were deeply affected by this. There's not a place in the nation that was not. And we were very much involved in several projects around moving things like personal protective equipment for healthcare workers, and while the setup was occurring for the distribution of vaccines. So it was a very, very complex circumstance, national emergency, on top of the sort of the specific kinds of disasters we have with hurricanes, because this was the entire nation itself. So very, very difficult. A lot of challenges with regards to data, management of data, and that complexity.
I got to tell you, super interesting how you guys have worked so closely and developed into such a great mission. So really, as we move beyond the pandemic, how does Red Hat and open source software help prepare FEMA for really future disaster response?
Yeah, another great question, Larry. In many ways, this idea of secure computing has really become significant, right? Cybersecurity is a really major, both a business challenge and an industry challenge. It's also a national security challenge affecting every government agency, from local government all the way up to the federal level. And this idea of secure computing, I see very much Red Hat becoming almost, it's an open source software company, but it's also becoming very much a cybersecurity company in many ways, leading the charge on what Michael Perry, this author of a book that was written last year, which it's become one of my favorites, and he writes about what's called immutable architecture. And the fascinating thing about that is, I've now concluded that one of the features of immutability is in fact portability, and portability is immutability. How do we actually get to architectures that are truly, how should you say, unchanging, but yet maintaining the flexibility? You think about things like Docker containers is an example that he uses, or Git repositories, or even cryptocurrency, or blockchain technologies, or domain-driven design. Those are the examples that Perry provides. So in many ways, as Red Hat leads the charge on things like advanced cluster management, technologies like that, those are the kinds of things that, together with all the acquisitions, StackRox and Quail and Claire and Keycloak, a lot of the features that are now being built into the features on top of Core OS and that entire strategy, I see that moving us to the place where immutability is portability. And so now I have some flexibility, I have maneuverability. And when it comes to how we now think of data, compute, and the controls for data and compute all being edge-based in a world of zero trust networking where we assume breach, I think you guys are really well positioned to help those of us that are trying to meet, the outcomes, positive outcomes for disaster survivors and U.S. citizens.
Wow. And I really picked up the word immutable and architecture. I love that. And that's hugely what we're moving into. So, first of all, thank you to Ted and the entire team at FEMA for not only sharing the stories, but for your mission. It's always great to see how organizations across public and private sectors really do innovate through technology, even in the most difficult times. So I want to thank you very much, Ted, for being here. It's truly an honor to have you. And our next customer, Schlumberger, is also focused on using open source principles in new ways through open data. Sarah Kuntz, the strategic account manager at Red Hat, is here to talk you through their stories. Sarah, over to you.
Schlumberger supports many of the world's most vital energy operations through the delivery of equipment and services. They are also on the forefront of digital innovation across the energy sector. And through the use of its Delphi cognitive environment, Schlumberger delivers an open, secure, and collaborative ecosystem to enable solutions across the exploration and production lifecycle. Please welcome Shashi Menon, Vice President of Digital Technology at Schlumberger.
Thank you, Sarah, and thanks to Red Hat for the opportunity to share our digital perspectives at your summit today.
It's great to have you here, Shashi. Last year, we announced a major collaboration between Schlumberger, Red Hat, and IBM to accelerate digital transformation across the energy industry. Can you touch on the advantages that Schlumberger saw in that partnership?
Definitely. There are three key aspects to our partnership. First of all, as you know, Schlumberger is committed to delivering digital solutions to our customers wherever they operate around the world. This often means going beyond the current public cloud footprint to deliver cost-effective solutions to our users. We find that the Red Hat OpenShift platform provides us with the right technology stack to build and deploy digital solutions anywhere in the world that our customers are operating. Of course, to be able to do that requires a significant amount of agility in our ability to understand our customers' problem and come up with solutions to address them. As a group, we were able to go from a small proof of concept in early 2020 to a large co-development program later in the year, and we are expecting to have our first solutions in general availability this year. This is testament to the highly collaborative nature of the relationship between our companies. Finally, Red Hat's legendary commitment to open source is also shared by Schlumberger, who have made openness a key element of our technology strategy for almost 20 years. Openness is the foundation of Delphi, Schlumberger's enterprise-scale digital environment for the energy industry.
Obviously, the open source nature of Delphi was the key to our partnership. How does leveraging the open ecosystem spur innovation in the energy sector?
Well, the success of any open digital platform lies in its ability to enable its users and customers to innovate and leverage the power of digital in their businesses and their workflows. For us in the energy industry, the Delphi environment enables Schlumberger, our customers, our partners, and even our competitors to bring innovation to the market very rapidly. Schlumberger also contributed the data platform that underpins the Delphi environment to the OSDU, an open group forum for the energy data, which is fast emerging as the industry data standard. So, instead of the lock-in feel of a closed system, our open environment fosters strong collaboration, enabling Schlumberger to co-innovate with energy companies to solve their challenges and drive their business transformation.
And speaking of business transformation, Schlumberger will be the first to deliver hybrid cloud implementation of the open data platform for the industry. Can you comment on how that data foundation will support your customer innovation and what's next along the journey for Schlumberger in this data space?
Absolutely. So we are very proud of our collaboration with IBM and Red Hat to co-develop a hybrid OSDU platform that is critical to supporting the vast number of energy companies that are unable to leverage the public cloud today. The use of the OpenShift platform democratizes access to both data and technology in locations where our customers are operating, while yet satisfying data sovereignty and regulatory compliance obligations. So we are looking forward to bringing this hybrid OSDU solution to the market later this year. The other key facet of Schlumberger's operation is that we work in a wide range of operational settings at various field locations around the world. This makes edge computing an important aspect of our business activities. But just decisions.
And always, thank you so much, Shashi, for your insights.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Sarah, for the opportunity to convey how Schlumberger, IBM, and Red Hat are working together to develop digital solutions to address our customers' challenges anywhere that they may be operating in the world.
And that is the most exciting part of working with our customers. It's how watching our customers solve these complex challenges, through data democratization or leveraging the edge with open source technology. We look forward to continuing our partnership with Schlumberger and supporting energy digital innovation across your industry.
Hola a todos, soy Victoria Martínez, gerente de desarrollo de negocios en AI and Analytics de Red Hat. Estoy muy feliz de que me acompañen dos de nuestros ganadores del Premio a la Innovación de Red Hat 2021, ambos clientes de Argentina. El Ministerio de Salud de Argentina y Medife, una empresa de medicina prepaga, una aseguradora de salud. Vamos a conocer cómo trabajamos en conjunto para digitalizar los datos de salud y modernizar sus infraestructuras, y cómo estos proyectos ayudaron a estar preparados para responder a las demandas de los ciudadanos y sus usuarios durante la pandemia de COVID-19. Ahora les presentaré a Facundo Trillo, CEO de Medife, y Fernando Núñez, Director Nacional de Gobernanza e Integración de Sistemas de Salud del Ministerio de Salud de Argentina. Muchas gracias a ambos por compartir este espacio conmigo sobre este tema tan relevante que es la resiliencia. Primero, ¿pueden contarnos un poco sobre sus organizaciones y su cobertura en Argentina? Facundo, ¿puedes empezar?
Hola Victoria, Medife es una organización argentina que ofrece cobertura de salud, es una de las entidades líderes del segmento con uno de los mayores niveles de satisfacción. Tenemos más de 60 sucursales en el país con más de 300.000 asociados. Nuestro propósito como organización es cuidar y mejorar la salud de las personas, sorprendiendo y maravillando a nuestros asociados, creando un vínculo cercano, simple y ofrecerles un producto de calidad con un servicio diferencial.
Excelente. Fernando, ¿puedes contarnos un poco también sobre tu organización y cómo es la cobertura que tenemos en Argentina?
Hola Victoria, el Ministerio de Salud de la Nación es una entidad pública de Argentina responsable de la accesibilidad, la calidad, la equidad en la atención de sus ciudadanos.
¿Y pueden contarnos cómo comenzaron con su transformación y por qué eligieron a Red Hat? Fernando, empezamos contigo.
Sí, cómo no, Victoria. Vimos la necesidad de cuidar a nuestros ciudadanos, de brindar un acceso equitativo a la atención médica y abordar la complejidad del almacenamiento de datos, la disponibilidad de datos de salud y los problemas de acceso que teníamos a esos datos de salud. Por eso nos asociamos con Red Hat para construir una red nacional de salud digital que nos brinde información de proveedores de atención médica de manera fluida y consistente en todo el territorio del país con sus 24 jurisdicciones.
Y Facundo, ¿cómo empezaron su transformación y por qué eligieron a Red Hat?
Medife teníamos un mapa de soluciones desarrollados con metodologías tradicionales cascada tenía una complejidad muy alta para la interoperabilidad que necesitaba la operación, y esto hacía que las entregas fueran muy difíciles y a un ritmo muy lento, de acuerdo a las necesidades que tenía el servicio. Por eso decidimos enfrentar un proceso de transformación donde evaluamos diferentes soluciones tecnológicas dentro de las mejores prácticas de mercado. Optamos por Red Hat con OpenShift, y esto nos permitió una flexibilidad con arquitectura escalable basada en estándares.
¿Qué cambios requirió esta transformación?
Bueno, en Medife actualizamos la infraestructura y digitalizamos todos los registros para permitir tanto asociados como prestadores que puedan realizar todo en línea. Hoy contamos con 100% de los procesos digitalizados, tanto para asociados como para los prestadores. Junto con la evolución tecnológica, implementamos también un cambio metodológico y llevamos adelante una verdadera transformación cultural. La metodología de trabajo incorpora el proceso de la adopción de metodologías ágiles, y esto nos permite un desarrollo iterativo muy rápido.
Sumamente interesante. Y misma pregunta a Fernando, ¿qué cambios requirió esta transformación en su organización?
Grandes cambios, Victoria. Nos basamos en la experiencia pasada con metodologías ágiles, con métodos ágiles, por los que los equipos del ministerio tuvieron que adoptar estas metodologías, entrar a la cultura de DevOps y los modelos de integración y entrega continua, CI/CD, para trabajar al ritmo de la demanda que requería los tiempos de pandemia por los que estamos viviendo.
Y ahora, cuando comenzó la pandemia de COVID-19, ¿qué desafíos enfrentaron, Fernando?
El principal desafío fue sostener la alta disponibilidad de los sistemas de información para que todas las jurisdicciones del país, que son 24 con todos sus municipios, pudieran soportar esta carga de datos, esta demanda de tener los sistemas disponibles para reportar esa información, y esa información que sea transformada en tableros, lo necesario para tomar las decisiones importantes dentro de los ministerios de salud provinciales.
Excelente. Y Facundo, ustedes cuando comenzó la pandemia de COVID-19, ¿cuáles fueron sus desafíos?
Tuvimos que garantizar primero la continuidad operativa, permitiendo que todos los colaboradores puedan realizar sus funciones en remoto, y también tuvimos que digitalizar los procesos para que tanto asociados como prestadores pudieran ser atendidos. Medife era una organización donde más del 90% de la atención era presencial o telefónica, con documentación basada principalmente en papel. Hoy la atención y los registros digitales son una realidad, y creemos que muchas cosas llegaron para quedarse, como la telemedicina, el autocuidado y la autogestión a través de canales digitales, entre otras cosas. Lo más importante es capitalizar todas las experiencias para impulsar el cambio con el rumbo con el que estamos tomando. Tenemos una hoja de ruta con muchas iniciativas, con el objetivo de ampliar el uso de los servicios digitales, mejorar la atención médica, el acceso a una historia clínica electrónica y la autogestión.
¿Cuántos cambios? ¿Y cómo ayudaron sus esfuerzos de modernización y digitalización en la respuesta al COVID-19? Facundo, en Argentina, ¿cómo se organizaron?
Esta nueva arquitectura nos permitió al Medife seguir operando durante el aislamiento social obligatorio del COVID-19 y escalar. Por ejemplo, la plataforma de telemedicina aumentó 100 veces el volumen con lo que teníamos antes de la pandemia para poder atender a miembros en todo el país, personas con movilidad restringida por el aislamiento, por diferente vulnerabilidad clínica, o hasta personas que estaban en localidades más remotas. También implementamos nuevos canales digitales de atención vía web, chat y aplicaciones móviles. Desarrollamos nuevas aplicaciones web y móviles para brindar atención y seguimiento a pacientes COVID en sus domicilios por un equipo médico especializado. También desarrollamos soluciones para poder apoyar a una atención de estos pacientes en el ámbito de la salud mental, y lanzamos aplicaciones móviles específicas para personas que se encuentran solas en contexto de aislamiento, para alertar a familiares cercanos sobre posibles problemas por la falta de movimiento de sus teléfonos celulares.
Y Fernando, ¿cómo ayudaron sus esfuerzos en esta modernización, en la digitalización para la respuesta del COVID?
Bueno, a través de la Red Nacional de Salud Digital, el Ministerio construyó un tablero de consolida de información para facilitar la toma de decisiones que son decisiones estratégicas durante la pandemia del COVID-19. Esto fue fundamental para llevar adelante una política pública consolidada respecto al tratamiento de la pandemia.
Última pregunta, Fernando. ¿Cómo ven el 2021?
El 2021 va a ser un año para consolidar logros, para consolidar estos hitos que hemos tenido durante el 2020. Estos logros se van a basar en sostener la plataforma, en capacitar a nuestros equipos de desarrollo, nuestros equipos de DevOps para los nuevos desafíos que van a venir este año, que tienen que ver con la campaña de vacunación, tiene que ver con la toma de decisiones ahora respecto a la campaña de vacunación y cómo proveer a cada uno de las jurisdicciones provinciales la información necesaria para llevar adelante una campaña exitosa, que esto va a ser posible solamente teniendo estas plataformas de OpenShift instaladas y poder brindar esa información, brindar esa disponibilidad de datos que necesitan todas las jurisdicciones, todos los usuarios del sistema de salud argentino.
Y Facundo, ¿ustedes cómo ven el 2021?
En Medife logramos vencer muchos paradigmas. Conseguimos alcanzar un ritmo y una velocidad de entregas que nunca habíamos tenido. Tenemos soluciones como la telemedicina que ya son un diferencial adoptado por el asociado, que en muchos casos no necesita perder tiempo trasladándose o exponiéndose, aguardando en una sala de espera. Puede hacerlo desde la comodidad de su casa y en pocos minutos recibir atención. El autocuidado y la autogestión a través de los canales digitales también son realidades que llegaron para quedarse, entre otras. Lo más importante es capitalizar todas estas experiencias para impulsar el cambio en el rumbo que estamos tomando. Tenemos una hoja de ruta con muchas iniciativas, con el objetivo de ampliar el uso de los servicios digitales, mejorar la atención médica, el acceso a una historia clínica electrónica y la autogestión.
Quiero agradecerles a ambos, Fernando, Facundo, por unirse hoy a la discusión. Realmente fue sorprendente saber cómo superaron estos desafíos con la ayuda de las soluciones de código abierto de Red Hat. Muchas gracias por acompañarme.
Muchas gracias.
We hope you enjoyed the customer discussions. I'm really happy to introduce Burr Sutter and his team to show an exciting demo focused on the automated life of a sysadmin. Now let's get started.
Well, hello and welcome. We have a series of great demonstrations for you all today, and I gotta tell you, I'm really excited, and I know you will be as well. We're gonna take you on a journey from the traditional data center and through normal operational environments and across the open hybrid cloud. Now, let me start with a little fun fact. Perhaps you've heard of the world-famous San Diego Zoo. Well, the San Diego Zoo has over 3,500 rare and exotic animals, over 650 different species, and each of these rare and exotic animals have their own special diet, habitat, and very specialized care. Well, I mention that because perhaps as an IT professional, with your normal infrastructure, your normal systems, you often feel like a zookeeper trying to manage your own exotic systems, architecture, infrastructure, and applications. Well, perhaps you feel that way too. So now I want to talk about how we bring some sanity to our operational environments. Let's talk about being augmented, automated, and advanced. We're going to show you what it means to be augmented with Red Hat Insights, automated with Ansible, and advanced with advanced cluster management for Kubernetes and OpenShift. So let's dive in. First up is Rich Garrido. Rich Garrido is one of our Linux gurus here at Red Hat, and he's also spent time on the front lines as the Linux sysadmin. Now, Rich, what would you say was one of the greatest challenges you faced as a day-to-day Linux sysadmin?
Hey, Burr, as a sysadmin, it's been difficult for me, always been difficult to keep track of all the systems that I manage today while being responsive to the needs of the business and the needs of my developers for tomorrow. In fact, let me show you how all that works. So if I take a look at my environment, I can see that I have a number of tickets that I need to address. First and foremost, I have to address a critical vulnerability for sudo across a number of production hosts. And normally I would address that by, hopping over to a system, running one or more yum commands to patch the particular packages in question. So in this case, I'm running, a number of yum update commands, and I will go ahead and address that system. I can then copy paste that command, right, and then run it across other systems as well. So I can run it here and I can run it across multiple systems in my environment. And while that works, that doesn't really give me a great deal of, fleet-wide insight into the systems in my environment. So one of the new capabilities that I have when I head over to cloud.redhat.com is I get the ability to see fleet-wide all the things that are affecting my systems. So let's take a look at vulnerabilities, for instance. So I can see here all of the vulnerabilities that are affecting systems in my environment. And in this case, if we scroll down to the sudoers vulnerability, I can see that that vulnerability affects 6 systems in my environment. So this gives me the ability to quickly have insight and then address those systems if I so wanted to. But more on that later. If I head back over to my ticketing system, I see that the next piece of work that I have is addressing installing Java and Postgres on a number of production instances that I have. So again, I head back to the CLI, I'll hop over to one of my systems, and then I'd run a yum command to install the packages that I need. So while this works, and this is totally powerful in the way that a lot of folks operate, there are some new capabilities that we have to make this a lot easier. So head back over to cloud.redhat.com and let's take a look at Image Builder. So with Image Builder, I now have the ability to deploy an image across all 3 of these clouds. So go ahead and select all 3. In the case of Amazon, I'm going to punch in an account number. Go ahead and select for registration and activation key, type that in. And then now I can embed in the packages that I need in order to deploy this system for my developer. So go ahead and search for OpenJDK, add that in. And then I'm also going to add in the Postgres packages that are needed to support the database. So we'll do that, search, and we'll add those in as well. And now with that done, I can go ahead and hit create, and then this image will be deployed to all 3 of those clouds, and I can now start spinning up instances based upon this image. So hit create. So now that that's done, we're going to head back over to cloud.redhat.com. So now that we have the ability to bring systems into cloud.redhat.com easily, we can now manage them here as well. So let's go back to that sudoers vulnerability that we had from before. Now we noticed that there were 6 systems in my environment that are affected by this sudoers vulnerability. So instead of installing these packages by hand, I can now select all 6 of those systems or a subset thereof, choose to remediate them, and add them to a playbook to happen in our next maintenance window. So by doing this, I now can scalably address these systems across my entire environment. Well, now that I've gone ahead and gotten prepared to do a maintenance window, let's go ahead and find some other things that may be amiss that may potentially cause us outages in the future. So I head over to Advisor, and Advisor gives us the ability to look at things more from an operational perspective, stability issues, performance issues. In this case, we found a bug with Subscription Manager that affects the way it behaves, and this is an important tool that we need to connect our systems in. So we'll go ahead and select these 5 systems, remediate them as well, and let's add them to our existing playbook. So we'll go ahead and we'll add them there. And now I have a playbook to address all of these systems, and I can pass this off to my automation engineer to give them the ability to address these systems. And we can do that by heading over to what we call the remediations app. And we're going to hit refresh just to show our new March maintenance playbook. And I can now take this playbook and hand this off to my automation engineer so that he or she can address these systems during our next maintenance window. Back to you, Burr.
Wow, Red Hat Insights really is everywhere. And I love what we're currently doing with Red Hat Insights. We're currently monitoring close to 3 million systems and gathering over 70 terabytes of anonymized data. So lots of interesting information coming out of that. And I love how we see Insights as managing and augmenting the superpowers of our operational professionals. But I have a key question for you, Rich. A key question in this. I'm sure the audience would like to know. What is it going to cost?
So all of this is now included as part of Red Hat's updates to its developer program. That program offers up to 16 instances of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Those instances can be deployed for development or production usage, and they can be deployed across physical systems, virtual systems, or any of the public clouds. In fact, let me show you how that works. Once you sign up at developers.redhat.com, we offer a new simple register and run experience. So we go ahead and just register a system like you would traditionally, provide a username and password, or you can also use what we call activation keys, roughly the same thing. And once that system's registered, it's ready to go, right? You have to do nothing else other than install the packages that you may require, and I'll show that in a second. So once the system gets connected and finishes its registration process, we literally just kick off any yum command that we need in order to install additional packages or anything that that system may require. So You could do that very simply by, running like yum update, which I'll do here. And then off you go. So it's super simple. Register, run. That's all you have to do. And once the system's connected in, we can head over to Subscription Watch and we can see and keep track of those 16 systems. So if you want to understand where those systems are being deployed, you can log into Subscription Watch. You can see not only how many of those systems you're running, but where they're running at. In this example, we're showing systems running at Amazon, Azure, as well as the Google public clouds.
I do love that super easy subscription registration. That is fantastic stuff, and I'm sure our audience will love that component that you showed us right there, Rich. And of course, everyone should join our developers.reddit.com program and be part of this. Now, thank you so much for that, Rich. I love what you showed us there. I do see it as a new superpower for our Linux sysadmin users, and it really is an augmentation using insights at cloud.reddit.com. Well, now I want to tell you a little story. I want to talk about the time when I was actually a consultant working out of Atlanta, Georgia. And in this little story, it had a crazy adventure, a crazy situation occurred, and it was a lifelong lesson for me. Early one morning, we actually had a customer call us up in a full panic. And our team normally provided custom software development as well as infrastructure support for many of our customers. So we got the team together, rushed over there, and found them all in a conference room, already kind of in a panicked situation. We walk in the room, and we asked them what was the concern. They said, you don't understand, we have a system that is down, we have updates and upgrades that are not occurring, and we're incredibly worried about this. And we said, okay, can you tell us about the logins? Can you tell us about the documentation? Describe how things have been configured or changed since we last saw the system? Perhaps you have your playbooks or scripts that we can look at? And they said, that is the problem. At this point, we had our person who knows all that was in a major car accident, and he is unavailable to help us right now. Well, to bring that story to a close, the person in question was actually fine, but was unavailable for several days. And during that time, they had multiple systems outages, and it was a chaotic environment trying to bring things back together. So I want you to think about that story for a moment, because it might impact you, okay? As a matter of fact, let me actually bring up Matthew Jones. Matthew Jones is our chief architect for the Red Hat Ansible automation platform. He is our guru of all things Ansible here at Red Hat. And Matthew, have you ever encountered a story like that one?
I think we've all heard stories about this. And in the back of our mind, this is something that worries us all the time. What can we do to sort of prevent this? And I think the answer to that is we need to share and collaborate better on things, and we need to step up with our automation and how we internally collaborate on that automation. How about I show you how the Red Hat automation platform has been working for us and what it's sort of enabling for us when it comes to collaborating and sharing on automation. So just like everybody else, I have a ticketing system that I have to interface with. And I know today we actually have a March maintenance window that we're going to be running through. The operations teams have used cloud.redhat.com to help them put together this March maintenance window in the form of playbooks to address CVEs, some other automation that they want to roll in. I know that they've reviewed this and validated it. Now we're in our maintenance window, and so it's time to run it. So I've taken the playbook that they've put together for the maintenance window, and I've pulled it into our automation platform, Ansible Tower, which runs on-prem for us. And I've prepared this for us today. You can tell I have the playbook here. I'm creating a job template on Ansible Tower here. I've pulled in the project where we've checked in and collaborated on making sure the playbook looks good. You can see the playbook here. It's pointed at our production servers, and it uses our sort of global production server credentials. Now, I don't have to have access to this credential. We just use it to run our maintenance windows, and it comes in from our credential management system, which works together with our automation platform to credential and control access to the systems that we need. So we feel pretty good about this during our maintenance window. I'm going to go ahead and kick this off while we do some other things. So with that running, I'm going to jump back to the ticketing system because I know one of the dev teams is putting together an update to the Ship Commander application. Really excited about this, and they want our help building the automation for it. So I'm going to jump over here where I've been putting together the automation playbook for this. And what I want to call out about this playbook, so first of all, it's YAML. It's a pretty simple syntax for building it. Anybody can do it. But one of the key things here is that almost every time we deploy an application within our organization, we're deploying it with a database. And so rather than building the automation every time we want to deploy a new application to manage the databases, within our organization, we have produced a collection that has roles and modules for managing the database for us. So when I'm building the application automation for the Ship Commander application, I don't have to write any of that database automation. It's already been written for me. We collaborate and share that knowledge by working and perfecting that automation to work no matter where we use it. And you can see it here. I'm pulling in a role for deploying Postgres. Now, what do we do with that collection in order to share it and make sure everybody is aware of it? And that's where Automation Hub on cloud.redhat.com comes in. And so I want to show you some things here. So what you're looking at here is Automation Hub on cloud.redhat.com. And what's great about cloud.redhat.com's Automation Hub is that it brings together partners and vendors of Red Hat and Red Hat themselves that have put together collections, roles, modules, anything you need for automation, the sort of building blocks of automation. It brings them together in one place where I can see everything that these vendors have put together, whether I'm managing clouds, network infrastructure, RHEL systems. It doesn't matter. It's all here, and it's all certified and tested and validated, and we can trust it. So on-prem, we also run a private automation hub. Now, that private automation hub, we take the collections from Automation Hub on cloud.redhat.com, we pull those in, and we push into our private automation hub our own collections, such as that Postgres, the database collection that I mentioned earlier. And then we can use these reusable components to help us with the building blocks, the things that we do all the time that we need to collaborate on that always need to work the same way. And it's really great. So here I've brought in our Postgres role from the collection that I got from Automation Hub. I've gotten the jar from the dev teams. I've put together a system D unit and made sure it's going to be started when we bring the system up. You can see I ran a test here. I'm going to kick off another test, but I actually feel pretty good about this. So I'm going to jump back over to our Ansible tower here, and let's just check and see how that maintenance window action is going. Here it is. You can see our March maintenance window execution was successful. I can let the operations teams know that everything is going well and that we're out of our maintenance window and everything went good. So, but let's circle back to this to the Ship Commander application. So just like the March maintenance window automation, I put together a job template in Ansible Tower, and you can see it here. I've pulled in the playbook that we were just working on from the Ship Commander application project, and we have our global applications inventory, which will let us deploy our applications in the right location. Once again, I'm using the credentials that we use for application deployment. And I'm going to go ahead and kick this off and run it. And in the meantime, I'm going to show you something else. All of this automation is great, but how is this helping us? What is this really doing for us? Is it saving us money? Is it saving us time? We need to be able to tell. And what we can do on cloud.redhat.com using automation analytics is we can come in here and get a really good view of how automation is working for us, answer all of those questions that I just mentioned. And we can get a view of all of the jobs run across all of our clusters because we have multiple Ansible automation platform clusters running on-prem. We can see how well they're working. And when they're not working well for us, we can dive into these and figure out what went wrong. What can we do better? How can we change our automation to run more efficiently so that we can feel confident in it, so that we can come together and collaborate to make sure that we're writing automation in the best possible way. So is all of this saving us money? And I think that's a pretty easy question to answer, right? Like, so looking at this view here in the automation calculator on analytics, you can see just over the last few months, calculating in for the cost of our software engineers, how much our automation process costs. You can see that just in the last month or so, we've saved almost $2 million just by switching, just by onboarding automation into our infrastructure, from our dev teams to operations teams. Our automation teams can now all of those teams can now focus a lot more on what other areas can we invest in to grow our business and become more successful. So let's check back over here on this automation for the ship commander application. And actually, it looks like it was successful. I think I might have this open here where I was waiting on it. And yep, it looks like the ship commander application itself has deployed. I can go ahead and let the dev teams know that it's ready, give it a test. I know that they know what to do with it next, so I can hand it off to them.
Well, Matthew, I love how you showed us that with Ansible, you can manage all those critical vulnerabilities across hundreds of servers at great scale, and I love what you showed us there with the cost savings. Now, I do have a key question for you, though, at least this key thought. I know that we have hundreds of thousands of systems administrators that have chosen the way of automation and collaboration. What do you think about that?
Burr, this is the way.
This is the way to be automated. I love it. I love The Mandalorian. Well, thank you so much for that, Matthew. Caught me off guard there for a second, but that is absolutely fantastic. I love what you showed us today. All right, now we're going to change directions for a moment. We actually need to take a little detour from our current story and talk about another character in our story here. And that is the application developer. So we've seen how to manage systems and hosts and VMs and, of course, Ansible playbooks and all that with cloudofred.com and Red Hat Insights. Amazing stuff there. But this application developer also is a very special person within our story. As a matter of fact, we actually have a special guest star today coming to us all the way from France, and that is Sebastian Blanc. So let's welcome him to the stage. Bonjour, Sebi.
Bonjour.
So, Sebi, I have a key question for you. And that is this real simple one. What would you say is one of the greatest challenges you have as an application developer?
Sure. My greatest challenge is waiting on tickets, waiting for days to get access to a server so I can test and validate my code. I rather not spend time on VMs, Linux commands, or playbooks. What I like to do is to write code. But you know what? Hey, let me show you. As you can see here, my Visual Studio Code, I just finished writing my application, the ship tracker, which will talk with the ship commander app that Matthew deployed. It's running great on my machine. I just pushed the latest changes, but now I would like to test it on a real cluster so I can share it with my teammates, for instance. So usually, how do I do that? Well, I make a jar file or even maybe a container, and then I open a ticket on our ticketing system, and where I say, please deploy this jar as fast as possible. It needs to be on this node on this region, and also make sure to have enough CPU, enough memory, and oh yeah, be sure to set those environment variables. Otherwise, it will never deploy. And then I create the ticket, and then I wait, and I wait. But you know what? I've got some good news. The operation team has created a cluster for us, for the development team, a real cluster. And in fact, no, they have created free OpenShift clusters so that we can test our workload. I got them here. I got one running on Amazon, okay? And on top of that, of course, we have deployed an OpenShift. I got a second one running on Google Cloud Platform, running in the Asia region, okay? And again, OpenShift on top of that. And finally, we have a third cluster running on Microsoft Azure. And look at this, it's running in the France region. I love that. And same as the two others, it's running OpenShift as well. Okay, so let me go back to the first cluster. And we got this developer view in OpenShift. Okay, there's an admin view with complicated stuff like YAML, deployment, services. I'm a developer. I have a developer view for me where I can do easy stuff that I really understand. I'm about to deploy my workload, but first thing, I need to deploy a database. And if I look here, I get an option called database, so I click on that, and then I can just pick the database I need. I need a Postgres, so I click here on Postgres, I instantiate the template. I just have to set some parameters, like my username, Sebi, password, Sebi, because I'm secured, and the name of my database, ship, okay? And I just hit create, and that will create the database for me in a pod, will expose the servers, handle all the credentials for me. Really easy. And now I can deploy my workload. Okay, so let me go back here on the topology view. And you remember I just pushed my latest changes on GitHub. And I got this option here to tell OpenShift to grab my code from GitHub, from Git. So here I just select from Git. And the only thing I need to do is to point to my GitHub repo. And OpenShift is smart enough to detect it's a Java project, so it will build a Java project. And then I can change some stuff like change the name here of my application. And you remember in my ticket, I was asking the operation team to set some environment variables. Well, here I can do it myself. I just have here to click on deployment, and I can set my environment variables. So I need one called ship commander URL to speak with the ship commander app. Okay, and let me just hit create, and that will just git clone my project, build the jar, build the container, and then deploy it as a pod. It's pretty fast, takes a minute or two, but you know what? We have 3 clusters, and on my second cluster, the one running on Google Cloud, I have it already deployed. So you can see here my ship tracker, my Postgres, and I want to look at this button here, the start build. This button will start a build for me. And imagine that I'm back here on my Visual Studio Code. I make a last minute change. I commit it. Okay, I just have to come back here, hit the start build button, and that will again git clone my repo, create a jar, create a container, deploy it as a pod. Again, pretty fast, but I have a third cluster where I have all the stuff already running. So I got here my ship tracker. It's a deployment and it's running a pod. Me as a developer, I can check some usage like CPU usage. I can, even if I want scale up my application, I can increase the number of pods. And the other thing is that OpenShift has created a public route for my application. And just by clicking this link here, that will open my application. And look, that is my application consuming data from the ship commander app that Matthew just deployed before. And by the way, this ship commander app, I got it here running as well. So let's just add a shipment to check if everything is working. A shipment from Tangier to Colon City. On the ship, the Titanic, there we go. Let me hit save. And if I come back here, it should appear here on my globe. So now, me as a developer, I can do whatever I want on this cluster. I can deploy my own workloads.
Well, Sebi, watching you deploy that application across AWS, Azure, and Google is super cool. I do love that developer experience. But I want to know, what do you love about OpenShift?
What I love is that I can self-serve. I no longer have to file a ticket and then wait days to get access to the server so that I can deploy my workloads. I love the fact that I can use any cloud using exactly the same user interface. I can now take charge of my own destiny.
Well, thank you so much for that, Sebi. Absolutely fantastic stuff, and I love what you showed us there. Now, containers, Kubernetes, and OpenShift are absolutely amazing, and I love that self-service console and that developer experience that you saw, Sebi showed us there. And of course, it is still a manual process. So while it's point and click, and I love that, it is still a manual process. So for our real operational concerns, we also need to bring automation to our container platform. Well, so far we've seen how to be augmented with insights and automated with Ansible. Now let's talk about being advanced. Up next is Michael Elder. He's our lead architect for advanced cluster management for Kubernetes and OpenShift. And he is our lead guru when it comes to managing these clusters and containers at scale. Now, Michael, I have a very key question for you. And that is, if I'm a Linux systems administrator, I'm an operational professional, what is a critical concern that I have to be thinking about when it comes to managing large number of clusters, large number of containers?
Well, it's really about, how do I stop thinking about managing the individual thing and start really thinking about managing the entire fleet? How do I get a view across all of the clusters, across all the different cloud environments? How do I deliver applications to them? How do I deliver configuration policy to them in a consistent way? While Sebi is unique, his problems are universal. Lots of teams are coming and trying to run clusters on multiple clouds. And one of the things we've been thinking about is how to make that easier. But I tell you what, let me show you how this works. So Where we saw with Sebi, he was working with each cluster individually. He had one application that he was deploying in different environments. Here in Advanced Cluster Management, I can see that same application, but I can see it's running on multiple clusters, one in Northern Europe, one in Northern California. It happens to be one on Google, one on AWS. In addition, I can see all the parts of this application. I can see the services, I can see the routes, I can see the deployments. And I can also see that we are gluing the application to other parts of my process. As Sebi talked about, tickets are a big part of our world. And in this case, instead of requesting a ticket and waiting, we're simply using Ansible to automate creating that ticket and having that audit record of the change that was made. We're also using an Ansible automation job to update the load balancer that sits in front of all of the clusters across all of my cloud environments. Now, it's not just the 2 clusters that I can see for this one app. I'm really managing a small fleet of OpenShift clusters running on AWS, running on Google, running on Azure, running on IBM Cloud. Some of these are managed OpenShift clusters, and some of these I actually provision directly from Advanced Cluster Management, where I can control exactly how I want them configured, what versions, what sizes, and I can do the same for vSphere and Bare Metal. And a lot of that lifecycle management is just built right into the OpenShift platform. I can drive behavior like upgrade, and now instead of doing this cluster by cluster, I can even select multiple clusters or use policies to configure the versions I want across all clusters. Now, when I think about that application, sometimes I want to know where are all the parts of it running. And so we're actually indexing all of the clusters that are under management, and I can slice it up. I can look at, for the ship tracker app, what are the nodes across the fleet supporting it? Where is the storage across that environment that's supporting that application? So as Sebi trying to understand where things are running, and instead of having to switch from console to console, he can do this as well and drive that self-service behavior. Now, in addition, it's not just about making developers happy. Developers want velocity. Security teams want the comfort of knowing that the platforms aren't risking data or security standards. And so one of the things that's built right in is a way to understand what are the policies that need to be applied everywhere, and are we in compliance and actually enforce compliance as well. I can manage policies that deal with things like authorization. So maybe I want certain authorization providers or domains that are configured everywhere. I can deal with policies that drive behavior like encrypting my etcd data store across all of my OpenShift clusters in the fleet, or policies that manage the roles and role bindings as well. I can even use the broad catalog of operators from OpenShift and configure those operators. So for example, I'm using a image manifest vulnerability scanner using the container security operator, and I'm configuring violations to know when I have clusters that are not compliant because they have a image that's at risk. But I can also use policy to drive behavior like hibernating or turning clusters off. So back in my application view, in my global route, I can see that I've got some routes going on, and I've got users who are using this application on one side of the Atlantic and on the other side in the Pacific. So what I'm going to do is, as part of a policy, I'm actually going to turn off one of my clusters in Northern Europe. And I might do this as part of a schedule just to save capacity in my cloud bill. And as a result, because I have another cluster that's in Tokyo that has the same rule, the placement rule that's being applied to that application, what I'll see momentarily is the application will get removed from one cluster in Northern Europe, and it'll pick up the new cluster that's available. When that process triggers, it'll run a set of Ansible jobs. I can see the ones that Matt ran earlier, and then we'll actually see Ansible jobs running to create my ServiceNow, or excuse me, I'll see Ansible jobs running to create my ticketing system update as part of that audit record, and it'll also go through and update my load balancer as well. So I can see now the placement update has taken place. It's figured out that the Northern Europe cluster is offline. The Tokyo cluster is still valid. It's going to begin redeploying the application into that environment. It's triggered my Ansible Tower playbook to create the ticketing record so I have the audit history of the change. And once it rolls out those various parts of my application, so in this case, it's rolling out a deployment config, and I can see where is it at in that process. So this becomes a really powerful way now to understand the entire fleet-wide view. And in addition to that, we talked about that anonymized data going back to cloud.redhat.com. Maybe I can show you just a little sneak peek of something that we're also working on. So in addition to that type of control, we're also looking at what kind of insights can we deliver for those clusters. And here the insights are analyzing that anonymous data. And from advanced cluster management in a future update, you'll be able to actually see those insights and where they apply to clusters that are in that fleet, really helping to amplify what I can do as a single human to manage the hybrid cloud.
Well, Michael, I got to tell you, I love what you showed us there with ACM and Ansible, and of course that little sneak peek at insights at Red Hat at cloud.redhat.com. Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for showing us that. But I'd like you to just kind of summarize, what kind of one-line it for us. What does all this mean for that operational professional, that Linux sysadmin, that cluster admin who's trying to manage containers at scale?
Really, it helps me as just a single human to amplify what I'm able to do. I can manage dozens of clusters, thousands of Linux hosts across all different cloud environments, and tens of thousands of containers, all from one central point of control.
I love that. Dozens of clusters, hundreds or thousands of hosts, and of course, tens of thousands of containers. That is absolutely awesome stuff. Thank you so much for that, Michael. Really great stuff there, and thank you so much. Now, we've covered a lot of ground in a very short period of time. We showed you the Linux command line. We showed you how to be automated with Ansible. You got to see containers and, of course, the developer experience across Kubernetes and OpenShift with what Sebi showed us there. And you got to see management at scale from on-premises and across the open hybrid cloud. So at this point, I'd love to bring the team back up on stage. Let's bring them back up here because I want to see them all one last time. I want to thank our amazing team of systems administrators and of course, our developer. Guys, thank you so much. You guys did an amazing job. I love your presentations. I love your demonstrations. That was absolutely fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for that. Well, I hope you enjoyed our presentation today. We showed you a lot of great stuff in a very short period of time, but I hope you learned a little bit about how to be augmented, automated, and advanced.
Wow, thanks, Burr. For years at Red Hat Summit, you've been doing demos featuring development teams. But this year, it was all about the sysadmin and really focusing on all of the cool new features they can leverage. How was it different thinking about the sysadmin perspective this year?
Well, I really enjoyed getting into that new user, if you will, because that user, that operations person, that person who's basically out there making all our systems work and keeping them up and running all day, they're definitely under more pressure to do more with less. And so we really wanted to kind of focus on that. How do we make things more augmented with Red Hat Insights and the things you can see at cloud.redhat.com, augmented and automated with Ansible. So now you have Ansible and what you can do with a playbook. And then we want to show advanced, right? So the concept, what you can do with advanced cluster management, managing applications and clusters across the open hybrid cloud. So I had a lot of fun working on this particular individual, if you will, and making sure our demo teams and the different teams we have within Red Hat work together to build a demonstration that really spoke to that story. I hope we did that. I hope the audience enjoyed it. We certainly enjoyed putting it together.
Awesome. And what would you say is the hardest part of actually building this demo and building out all of that automation?
When in many cases, we have numerous different engineering teams and product teams from around Red Hat working together, often for the very first time, to build and produce this really interesting, amazing thing all by itself. So telling that story at scale and really having the ability to put it all together is just challenging just by itself. And I just mean the narrative and the script. But also, we get a chance to kind of work with each other's products, which is very cool. Like in this case, we actually had a ton on the Linux side of the house. We had all the new capabilities we see at cloud.redhat.com. We have all these new capabilities we have from Ansible and the Ansible automation platform. In many cases, folks haven't worked with OpenShift, and we show off the new OpenShift self-service, developer self-service model, and how that can offload work for the sysadmin. And then, of course, advanced cluster management, managing all of that at scale. So showing all those things, getting all these individuals working together, I think it's valuable for Red Hat and valuable for our customers.
That really sounds like a big feat, and we are so excited that you endeavored to do it. And I just really want to thank you. And if you enjoyed this, make sure to check out the interactive demo on day 2, featuring Burr and his team in a good old-fashioned game of Battleship AI.
Oh yeah, we have some really fun stuff coming tomorrow. You won't believe it, and you need to be there to come try it because we need you to come put hands on it. And we're gonna have a lot of fun with that one.
Next up is our CTO, Chris Wright. who is going to share his thoughts on the evolution of computing and open hybrid cloud. He's been leading the direction of Red Hat's open hybrid cloud mission for the last 5 years, and we're excited to hear what's coming in next with this ever-changing IT landscape. Chris, you have your eye on all the cool emerging tech and open source projects gaining traction. Can you tell us about what tech trends hitting the industry you are most excited about?
Oh, I love that question. So it's a combination of things, Emily. It's sort of data, which is proliferating. It's the way that we process data, which is increasingly around machine learning, so AI and machine learning, the hardware needed to support all that, and then the reality, which is in order to do that processing of all this data, we have to expand out to the edge. So it's data, hardware changes, and edge computing.
Awesome. And how is Red Hat and open hybrid cloud evolving with those trends?
Well, over the past few years, Paul, Matt, and I have talked about how the next evolution in computing needs to be the open hybrid cloud. Linux won in private data centers, and it has won on public cloud platforms. But if we leave things as they are, the biggest competitors in this space will continue to find ways to lock customers into their technologies and services. To achieve a true open hybrid cloud approach, we need to continue to create and foster communities that share this common purpose: to democratize the tremendous power of cloud platforms through open standards at every level, from service APIs to hardware. Every time we explore a new dimension of these technologies, we have to recommit to keeping things open. That's the only way to ensure that the best ideas win and that the future remains open to all. When I think about what I'm seeing in the industry right now, I focus on the concurrent evolution of cloud services and hardware. But first, let's understand where the pressure to innovate is coming from. Businesses are feeling immense pressure to increase agility and automate processes to meet customer needs and, of course, grow financially. The transformation to a digital business by giving cloud-like flexibility to critical business systems is not optional anymore. It's an imperative. Developers are looking for every option to reduce their time to success with each project. And operations need to maintain infrastructure security and reliability. So we can't just focus on perfecting the functionality of the software that we build. In an environment where developers need to innovate as rapidly as their cloud platforms will allow, the stability and availability of software at massive scale is as important as the software's ability to function at all. Good software with poor operational experience has limited value, especially as more enterprise software moves into the cloud. Right now, all of the operational expertise for running software is removed from the production of the code. If our goal is to maintain the openness in open hybrid cloud, we have to bridge the gap between the knowledge and tools like automation that support effective operations at scale with the community that's producing the software. So really, considering the operator's software experience and operationalizing development. This critical concept is something that I call Operate First. Operate First is about supporting the development of operational knowledge that can be encoded into upstream open source projects. Without a community focus on Operate First, companies consume the efforts of open source communities, learn how to operate those systems at scale, and then reserve that knowledge for themselves rather than contributing back to the community. As the world moves towards cloud services, we have to bring the community along by building on the software and the strong relationships we've built. A great example of what this looks like is Open Infra Labs. It's a project of the Open Infrastructure Foundation that works to integrate and optimize open source projects in production environments. They also publish complete reproducible stacks for existing and emerging workloads. As Paul mentioned in his keynote, Red Hat supports the Open Infrastructure Foundation through financial and engineering contributions to the Massachusetts Open Cloud. One of the newest OI Labs community efforts is the Telemetry Working Group. There are 3 core tenets to operate software: automation, software architecture, how many services you need, what APIs they surface, and telemetry. You can't operate software or have an operate first mindset without telemetry. If you want to get involved with their work on how to operate software at scale, head to this link to learn more and join the working group. This work is important because this is how we keep things open, by starting with collaboration. In order to innovate on platforms like the MOC, we first need to guarantee optimal system performance and reliability. For IT ops teams, this involves intelligently distilling insights out of the crush of surrounding data and across multiple cloud environments. According to the Linux Foundation, 175 zettabytes of data will be generated by 2025, 10 times more than in 2016. And teams using multiple monitoring tools and technologies to keep track of it, making it difficult to quickly correlate and analyze application performance metrics to solve complex emerging problems. Today's dynamic IT infrastructure cannot be efficiently managed using a traditional rules-based approach. Red Hat is working on this challenge with advanced cluster management for Kubernetes. If you want to see more about managing microservices and applications using AI, check out Burr's demo. We continue to advance that approach, which is where the modern AI ops paradigm comes in. It combines platforms, big data, and AI to help IT operations teams become more efficient, similar to Operate First. It's an approach we're already seeing customers adopt successfully, for example, using AI to ensure compliance. With how much is now moving through CI/CD pipelines, automating repeated tasks like resource configuration, code analysis, and vulnerability checks is no longer an option, it's a necessity. Infusing AI into a common CI/CD pipeline enables short, frequent development cycles with minimal disruption to operations. A great example of AI in a CI/CD workflow is Project Thoth. They're building an intelligent software recommendation system based on collective knowledge for Open Data Hub. This upstream AI as a service project runs in the Massachusetts Open Cloud. Red Hat is focused on transforming how cloud-native workloads can be secured by shifting security left in the container build and CI/CD phases. Our recent acquisition of StackRox underscores this focus. By bringing Kubernetes native security to OpenShift, we're furthering our vision to deliver that single, holistic platform that not only enables developers to build secure applications, but to also efficiently enforce security policies across the hybrid cloud. Let me bring in Ollie Gulshan, Senior Director of Product for StackRox, to talk about how StackRox brings security policy into Kubernetes.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Really excited to be here and really glad to be part of my first official Red Hat Summit keynote. Thanks again.
So I wanted to talk about Kubernetes native security and StackRox. How does StackRox enable teams to adopt that shift left in security?
Yeah, so this has been sort of at the core of everything we've been trying to do from the genesis of StackRox. And shift left, the way we see it, is really about shared responsibility model. And with additional complexity that we're seeing in application development, the velocity in engineering and product development, and really sort of the proliferation of tools and infrastructure, we see a lot of this logic needs to be flown back to developers, to engineers, to DevOps and engineering teams. So at its core, StackRox tries to ensure to capture as much context, knowledge, and insight about workloads, problems, the issues that arise, translate those into things like infrastructure as code templates, or for example, Git inputs, so developers can consume that using their existing workflows without really having to break any of their sort of implemented workflows as it exists.
That's awesome. So what does Kube native security mean, and what advantages does that bring over other products in the market?
Yeah, so the best way to think about Kube native security is infrastructure native. So when we talk about Kube native, there is a lot of functionality in Kubernetes that traditionally security tools had to replicate. As an example, when we do network segmentation, we leverage network policies from Kube rather than becoming a network proxy and inline and terminating, for example, MTLS. As a result of this, what ends up happening is your security becomes built in versus bolted on. You have less agents, less tooling, less components that are running in your infrastructure, infrastructure, and StackRox uses that core of Kubernetes knowledge of its understanding of workloads, your infrastructure configurations around things like RBAC, to be able to then re-implement the right way to run those components within Kube itself.
I got it. That makes sense. And I'm curious about StackRox and the approach that you took to building built-in network security features into Kubernetes. So why don't you give me a little insights into what you've done there?
Yeah, so having come from the world of security for a couple of decades before this, this was one of those kind of consistent pain points we saw, not only for infrastructure and developer teams, but also for security teams. So building that functionality into Kube gave us a couple of really sort of unique differentiators. One, we substantially reduced performance and risk overhead for teams, because what we're doing is we're implementing network functionalities like segmentation and firewalling through Kube itself, rather than, again, becoming an inline or additional tool that needs to run with privileges or root inside your environment. The other part of it has to do really with the roadmap that we're building with Red Hat going forward, which is how do you take this notion of StackRox learning your environment and giving you automated recommendations for how to segment and firewall your network from Kubernetes through service mesh, as an example, Istio, all the way through layer 6 and 7. So you have a sort of a hyper-converged stack for networking that allows zero trust applied from layer 3 all the way through layer 7, but built into your infrastructure.
Security and networking policy near and dear to my heart, but let's span out a little bit. StackRox focuses on security supply chain, infrastructure posture, and config management, and protecting workloads. So how do these functions interoperate to leverage one another?
Yeah, so this is another core differentiator of StackRox, which is that if you think about supply chain, it's very important to understand asset and inventory of tools and services that are getting introduced into your infrastructure. At the infrastructure part, you really want to understand, how am I hardening? How am I configuring my environment, all the way from networking segmentation to things like RBAC? And then finally, how am I protecting the workloads that are running? Now, if you were to sort of deal with each one of these buckets in a disjointed way, you lose a lot of context. So this goes back to the notion of why StackRox not only covers the entire life cycle, but ensures that leveraging your infrastructure itself, in this example, Kube, can take relevant context and apply them into different areas. So if we understand, for example, a workload doesn't need privileges at runtime, we can ensure that through a policy, that information is sent back to the developer, so on the next build, those privileges are removed. If there is a misconfiguration of RBAC where additional privilege is required, we can ensure to, for example, collect more data during runtime. So really the core differentiator and why it's important to have these phases stitched together is every stage or every path provides context for other aspects of your workflow. So for us, a cohesive policy language allows us to be able to stitch all these pieces together and ensure you're over time reducing your manual work that goes into protecting your infrastructure.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ollie.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris. I really appreciate it and look forward to more of it.
Another way systems are changing, beyond the need for simplified security, is coping with exponential data growth. Modern enterprise applications run on data, and the proliferation of endpoints in the hybrid cloud has led to staggering amounts of data to be processed. In the past, companies focused on getting this data back to a central point to process. But that approach isn't going to work anymore. According to Finances Online, there will be 75 billion IoT devices by 2025. And those devices are generating a lot of data. For example, the Automotive Edge Computing Consortium and IHS Automotive say that at a low estimate, the average connected vehicle will produce up to 30 terabytes of data in a single day of driving. With this volume of information flowing into enterprise systems, we're hitting actual physical limitations with bandwidth and latency. In order to keep up, we have to push the ability to process and react to information out to those edge endpoints. This will mean tackling challenges that are unique to the environments where edge devices are deployed. Some of these challenges include device resource constraints like CPU, RAM, and storage, securing publicly accessible devices, and building tolerance for interruptions across massive distributed networks. Let's hear from Daniel Gertner, systems engineer for IT and telecommunications, on how they're planning to meet some of these challenges with Edge. Hey, Daniel, thanks for joining me. So SBB has turned the timetable screens to smart information displays. Can you tell us a little more about what these displays do and how they exemplify the edge computing phenomenon?
Thank you for having me today, Chris. With the smart information display, we want to meet the needs of our customers and offer real-time, location-specific and interactive information with the monitors. And in the future, we will also provide customer information across all means of transport. In addition, the smart information display offers extra accessibility features for disabled people. For example, adaptive screen content or text-to-speech. We have tried to go a new way with the smart information display so that we can avoid problems like too little personal and manual tasks by a more efficient and standardized solution. For this, we have designed a completely automated solution with RHEL, satellite, and Ansible, which automatically deploys a robust and consistent environment. Smart information display store all important information locally, so that in case of a network failure, the most essential functionalities are still available.
So what do you see the future of edge technologies looking like in the transportation industry?
At the moment, we are exploring new ways on how to get in touch with our passengers by using text-to-speech, Bluetooth, augmented reality, and RFID. A good example is that we plan to enhance our passenger information system with Bluetooth to make the solution more inclusive for people with different needs by using their own smartphone as acoustic information device. Another example is the integration of e-ticketing in smart information display, which enables access to the entire mobility platform and its services. Finally, better management of passenger flows should also be possible and improved with the use of edge technology.
Great, thank you, Daniel. As you've heard, the software developers at Swiss Federal Railways understand the increasing demand for computational resources at the edge. It's just not possible to operate at the edge without processing and interpreting data at the endpoint, running with local data and without relying on a persistent network connection. For example, CPUs are no longer providing the yearly performance gains that enterprise software has come to depend on and that edge computing needs. A host of domain-specific acceleration hardware has emerged to augment the CPU and get workloads the performance they need. SmartNICs represent an example of this approach to improving compute performance by offloading compute-intensive tasks to optimize components. However, from a computing perspective, SmartNICs still rely on a general-purpose CPU to coordinate and dispatch workloads. In addition, they are generally only extensible through proprietary manufacturer-specific code. This creates interoperability challenges and conflicts with the architectural principles of Kubernetes containerized applications. It also conflicts with the idea of abstracting hardware and virtualization and creates security challenges by crossing isolation boundaries. So we're excited about the next evolution of compute that addresses these challenges. An accelerator with flexible compute capabilities and software-defined functions. This accelerator works as its own computer and can offload entire subsystems and maintain security isolation. It essentially moves hardware virtualization from the hypervisor to a software-defined device function. A great example of this new type of accelerator is NVIDIA's BlueField-2 Data Processing Unit, or DPU. Red Hat is working closely with NVIDIA and our ISV ecosystem to make the DPU accelerators accessible to RHEL and OpenShift users through software-defined device functions. Kevin Deerling, NVIDIA's SVP of Networking Products, is here to talk about how they're pioneering the concept of disaggregated and accelerated data processing for the next generation of data centers.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. And it's great to be here because Red Hat and NVIDIA share a joint vision that the data center is the new unit of computing. And the reason for this is simple. There's fundamental changes happening today in the data center. And hybrid cloud with software-defined and hardware-accelerated data centers is key. And it's powered by our new DPUs, and it's based on open source software. So cloud and accelerated computing and AI has fundamentally changed the data center in three important ways. First of all, every business is becoming AI. The second thing that's happened is the data center is the new unit of computing. And applications are now cloud-native microservices. That means that we also need a new multi-tenancy. That requires network virtualization and tenant isolation. And that's where OVS and security become super important. So this is where we bring our new DPU to the market. And the DPU complements the GPU and the CPU. So together, this becomes the new data center. And the DPU does three important things. It offloads, accelerates, and isolates data center workloads. So the software-defined networking, security, and storage can consume up to 30% of the CPU cores inside of a data center. And by offloading those, we free them up to run applications and make your data center more efficient. And this is where things like OVS and OVN can be accelerated, where we get 10 to 100 times performance gains versus pure software. And the last piece is isolation. And isolation is important for two reasons. One, with multi-tenancy, you need to have security. And in addition to that, it decouples the application operating systems from the underlying infrastructure. And this gives you more flexibility to actually move at a faster pace. The other key thing that we've done working with Red Hat is DOCA. That's our data center on a chip architecture. That allows you to write software and applications for the DPUs today and know that they're going to run with DOCA on DPUs tomorrow. If you're programming a data center, it needs an operating system, and Red Hat is the ideal partner to deliver on that. With software-defined, hardware-accelerated infrastructure that can be managed by Red Hat OpenShift. And with our NVIDIA DPUs, we can deliver the next generation of data center services. So together, working with Red Hat, we can bring all of this to all of our partners. Looking forward to continuing to work with Red Hat as we really change and optimize data center computing for the future. Thanks, great to be here.
This new system model is truly exciting. What we're speaking about here is defining the data center of the future, a truly open hybrid cloud data center. At Red Hat, we want to see open source become the de facto standard for creating these new composable architectures. Our partners, chip makers like NVIDIA and Intel, are committed to working with us and open source communities to develop open composable architectures. This work shows the value of participating in something that's bigger than any one person or company, learning how to innovate together, and then contributing that knowledge back to the community. It's an approach that will be especially important this year because we see 2021 as a turning point where, instead of just talking about cloud first, organizations are evolving to deploying cloud everywhere, extending to the edge.
Okay, I'm convinced. Open hybrid cloud is really becoming a reality today. The emerging tech trends you're pinpointing really do rely on an open future of open standards, open code, and open knowledge.
It really does. And that's why open hybrid cloud is so important. Whether you're a customer, a partner, an open source community member, or a fellow Red Hatter, we are all working together, and we have an important role to play in supporting this vision for the open hybrid cloud. It's one of the things I really love about open source. We create the future together.
Whoa, what a day for the main stage. We went deep into our open hybrid cloud approach with Red Hat leaders and customers alike, and caught the first of 2 amazing demos. Next up, we'll cover everything from Kubernetes 101 to fast-track AI and machine learning projects to security approaches for hybrid cloud environments in our vision and fundamental sessions. And after that, my friend Angela will be back to share the stage for her insightful and entertaining Q&A with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, followed by a performance by the talented Ben Folds. Stick around, you won't want to miss a minute.
CSTIC TV, tu portal de tecnología e informática, al servicio de la sociedad y los negocios.